Hey guys, it's that time again. It's the Troy Gramling podcast, and I am so glad that you have tuned in today. I got to tell you, I love to hang out with you. It is truly an honor that you give me a few moments of your day for us to talk about life, love, leadership, really the things in life that lead to greatness, that allows us to reach our potential and become successful. And in this series, we're talking about communication. I've really enjoyed it. I hope you have. We've looked at some of the most famous speeches, some of the most capable communicators, and just talk about what they do so as to accomplish the outcome they're looking for, so that we can do the same. Because there is no doubt that many of us have got some incredible ideas that we're trying to communicate with our kids, with our spouse, with our coworkers, with the banker who we want the loan to start the business, right? We've got some really important things to communicate. And if we're not very effective at communicating, sometimes a great idea goes by the wayside, and we don't want that to happen. We want and we need great ideas to succeed. In order for that to happen, we've all got to become better communicators. And that is exactly what we're talking about. We're on all the streaming platforms, as well as a video version. Maybe you're watching it right now on YouTube. And if you haven't already, I encourage you to invite somebody. They might enjoy it as well. Today, you're in for a treat. It's not going to take a whole lot of time because it's a rather short speech. It was written by one of our most famous presidents. We looked at preachers, we looked at coaches, we looked at presidents. Today, we're going to look at Mr. Abraham Lincoln, often thought of as the president that saved the Union in the midst of the Civil War. He gave a very famous speech. It was only a couple of minutes long, known as the Gettysburg Address. It happened in 1863, and he's going to mention 7 years ago. I just got to be honest with you, myself, along with 3 other people. It took 4 of us to figure out how long 7 years ago. And then once we figured that out, it took us a little bit longer to figure out that meant he was talking about 1776, which makes all the sense in the world. Maybe that's why he was a president and I'm just here on a podcast. Anyways, we've got his speech. We don't have the video version, but we do have the audio. And, well, it's not the original audio, of course. It's someone pretending to be, but it is the original. So let's listen to President Abraham Lincoln. And I kind of broke it down this way. We're going to listen to him talk about the uniqueness of the moment. In other words, we're here, and that's why this moment and what I'm about to say is really important. I need your attention, especially what he's saying. We have a president today that wants our attention. What does he do? So everybody does it differently, but everybody does it. Let's listen.
Fourscore and 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal.
Liberty and equality, right? This is new. That's something that was started by our forefathers, and it's about equality and liberty. In other words, there's a uniqueness in this moment, and he points that out. We're not just any nation, right? We were formed. It's a new nation, first of all, he says. So it's unique in that it's new. I mean, when you think about when nations came into being and how long they've been around, he's like, it's a new nation. It's just 7 years ago, 87 years ago that this nation had begun. And it didn't begin out of just a revolution, right? There was a revolution. We all know the Revolutionary War, but there was a purpose behind it, a uniqueness behind it. And he says that it's liberty or freedom, right? And equality. That we need to be free and that we are equal. Then he's going to talk about the cost of remaining unique. It's one thing to begin unique, right? You need to pay attention. Hey, everybody, come here. That's basically what he's saying. I'm about to tell you something important. We're unique. This moment is unique. So you need to listen to what I have to say. And then he talks about uniqueness. Well, it doesn't come cheap.
Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that that nation might live.
All right, so you notice he says, he's talking about the uniqueness of this moment, and then the cost of remaining unique. We're in a great battle, he says. But this is not just a battle about power. It's not just a battle about who's going to be in control. No, this is a battle for ideas. This is what makes it unique. And the cost to remain, right, for this to remain not about power, but to be about ideas, people have lost their lives. That's how important this is. So if you think about what you have to communicate or what I have to communicate, right, we can again just kind of follow this outline. Is there a uniqueness to this moment? Is there something important about what you're about to say that's urgent? Right? What's the urgency of what you're going to communicate? Is it because change is coming down the pike? Is it a financial reality? Is it a health reality? Is it a time reality, right? What is it that makes the moment unique so you can call it out, right? Because Abraham Lincoln at the beginning, it's not like, everybody knows it's 2 years into the war, so they know they're at war. But he's like, this is not a war about power. This is a war about ideas, and that makes it unique. And therefore, the cost that I'm asking, the cost that has been paid is high. And why is it high? It's high because what we're doing is different from what others have done. And again, that's an important style of communication, is that there's this sense of urgency. Now, it's different than one of the communicators we listened to was Billy Graham. And Billy Graham was, very passionate, very loud, very authoritative. Abraham Lincoln is communicating in a different way. Confidence, but he's not loud necessarily. He's not passionate, right? He's not yelling. He's not, no. He's using his words and the emotion those words evoke. The sense of pride, something bigger than just the battle. It's what the battle is over. And so there's a uniqueness in the moment, and then the cost. He doesn't hide from that. That's important when it comes to communication, because if I'm need or there has been a price paid for what we're doing or what I'm going to ask you to do, if I hide that or try to downplay that, then I'm going to come across as fake. I'm going to come across as manipulative. Who wants to give their life, their money, their time, their energy, their effort, their ideas, whatever it is, to someone or a project led by someone who's not being honest, who's being manipulative? Same is true when it comes to a parent, right? But even as a parent, you can say, well, it's just because I said so, and I'm the president of this house, or you can say, you know what, there's something unique about our family. It's not like every other family. And this makes us really, really unique. And in order to hang on to what I know you and I both want, we want to make just like everybody else. And we want to embrace this uniqueness, this difference. And so here's the cost. Here's what Grandma and Grandpa paid. And here's what we're going to have to pay. And whether it's your family or your company, then he's going to not only call out the cost, but he's going to honor the sacrifice that was paid. Because, again, at the end of the day, there's going to be a call for action. And in order to get people to act, to get people to move from point A to point B, you can't just, walk into a room and say, hey, right? You even heard people, you can't go into a movie theater and do what? Yell fire. Well, Whoa, I'm not. Because it creates chaos. Right? There's a sense of urgency in it, but it creates chaos. Well, we can't do that with our kids. We can't do that with our office. The president here is not doing it with our nation. He's walking through this process, and we are unique. There's a cost to this uniqueness, and he's going to ask us to pay part of this cost in the future by reminding us of those who paid it in the past, and that they're worthy of a sense of honor. So let's listen to it.
It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave...
Isn't that amazing, right? Because again, to keep our attention, because that's what communication is, you can't get people to do something they're not listening or don't know about because they moved on. He says, we're here to honor, we're here to dedicate. And then he turns around and says, but we can't. And you're going to continue to listen because what's the natural question? Why not? Now, you just told us we ought to do it. You told us it's a good thing to do it, to dedicate this ground, right, to the battle that's been fought and the idea behind the battle. And then he says, but we can't do that. And everybody's going to stay attuned. Why? Because we're all going to ask the same question. I can't. And he's going to tell us.
We've met, living and dead, who struggled here, have consecrated it, far above our poor power to add or detract.
Right? He says, we can't. Why? Because they already have. Those who have given their life, right? They've already dedicated this property. This property's already been consecrated towards something. So again, if we go back and we think about it, he's saying there's a uniqueness in the moment. There's a cost to remaining unique. And then he says, honoring the sacrifice that was paid for the uniqueness. And he wants to do all of those things. He wants to honor what has happened and the price and the sacrifice and the pain. But that's not why he's communicating here. He's communicating because he's going to call them to an action forward. He's going to bring them into the future to finish it, to accomplish it. And the reason that we need to do it, well, it's because it's unique. And because others, we have a legacy to live up to. We have a responsibility. Because others have paid a great price for you and I to be here today, is what he's saying. And again, anytime we're communicating something with a sense of urgency, it's important to remember the price that had been paid in the past. We can easily forget that. We can get so focused on the future, where we want to go and how important it is for us to get there, and what the church, what the company, what we need to do, without taking the time to honor those who have gone before us. Because you know what? The people that you and I are asking to go with us on this journey know that one day they're going to be those people. They're going to be the people in the past. And is the price you're asking them to pay going to be honored? Is it going to be appreciated? Because if we're not appreciating what those who have gone before us have paid, well, then is the price we're being asked to pay going to be appreciated? If we're not honoring those who have, we just celebrated, I don't know when you're listening or watching this, but we just celebrated not too long ago Memorial Day. And Memorial Day is a time to reflect upon those who gave an ultimate price and honor those who have paid that price in the past. So as to do what? For us to be willing to pay a price in the future. So as to continue to keep the uniqueness that Abraham Lincoln's talking about, which is liberty and equality, which is a freedom, a uniqueness from other countries in the world. Now we're going to see a call to action to remain unique. Okay? Notice what he asks the people to do and what he doesn't ask them to do.
The world will little note, nor long remember what we say here, but it can never...
Now, I got to tell you, he was wrong about that, wasn't he? Yeah, we remember the Battle of Gettysburg, and we remember what happened there. but I mean, we learned this when we were in school, and many of us today can quote at least the first part of this speech, and we know who gave it. So the power of a speech or the power of communication to bring about change isn't dependent always upon how long or how long it is, how many words it takes. I often reminded of this by people who think I may preach too long, right? It's the words that are chosen and the order in which we place them. It can make all the difference. So he says, the world will little note nor long remember what we say. Well, he was right about a lot, but he was wrong about that.
Never forget what they did here.
That's true.
It is for us, the living, rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced.
And again, this is just so awesome because he's got all these people to dedicate this battlefield to what has happened here and what's taken place here. And he says, you know what? Really, we're the ones that need to dedicate. We're the ones that need to commit. We need to finish the uniqueness of the battle that happened here. That we need to make sure that liberty and equality is something that's within reach of all the people here. It was in the minds of the forefathers. And we've now given lives. We went to war with ourselves in order to accomplish these ideas which make us unique. And while we're here to dedicate or to remember or to commit this ground to that urgency, to that idea, then he says, but really it's us. We need to act, right? So that's his call to action. And I would just say, man, almost any time we communicate, there needs to be a call to action. So that we're not just talking talk, right? We're talking to move forward. And the call to action may not be, I need you to do something. Even our president here saying this is what we need to do. It's not what you as the people need to do. This is what we as Americans need to do. We need to dedicate ourselves to finishing this. Because if we don't, we'll no longer be unique. If we don't, it's going to be just about power. It's just going to be, if we truly care about what was given to us by our forefathers, an idea, the reality was yet to be experienced, right? Equality and liberty, freedom. He says, but that idea was given to us. It was incredibly unique. But in order to even grab a hold of that uniqueness, we've had to go to battle. People had to pay a price. They had to be willing to lose their life. And in order to honor what they have done, then we have to commit to finish it. Okay? A call to action. And I just want to encourage you, it's always the hardest part to do because it's the part people will push back on. Right? The moment you ask somebody to do something, especially if it's something they don't want to do or something that needs to urgently be done, because think about what the president's asking here. The Civil War cost more lives than any war we've ever been a part of. We killed ourselves at a greater rate than we've ever taken the life of any other enemy. And yet he's looking into the lives of these people, the eyes of these people, and he's saying, you know what, we got to keep going. And we got to keep going because of the moment, the uniqueness of this moment. It's not any war. There's lots of wars, right? It's easy. How many times you've ever heard there's a war? And somebody says, well, how many times are we going to go to war? What's the war over? It's over oil, some people might say, when talking about some kind of war. Why would I? And the president's here just making sure that if you're going to call somebody to a sense of urgency, that there has to be something of value in that urgency. Can't just be like every other time somebody said we need to do something. There needs to be a uniqueness, and that's what he does. Let's listen to this lesson.
That we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain. That this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth.
That the government of the people, by the people, for the people, will not perish. So now he's giving us a vision of the future. So he's not only talked about the past, our forefathers, and the idea that they've given us, the cost of that idea, the call to action when it comes to that idea. Now he's saying, look into the future. Because if you'll look into the future, we're beginning afresh. We're beginning anew. He says, let me see if I can rewind this to get what he said before. It says, we resolve that these dead haven't died in vain. This nation under God have a new birth of freedom. Right? And what's he talking there? We're talking, of course, about slavery, for one thing. Saying a new birth of freedom, a freedom that extends further. Remember the idea that our forefathers gave us, liberty and equality? Well, that was unique, unlike other places, and so it had to be battled for, and we are on the verge, right? We're moving into a new freedom that includes a larger group of people, but in order for that to happen, he told us the call to action that came before it. And then he's like, if you do it, here's what we can accomplish together. A new freedom, for the people, of the people, that whole idea. So, and again, if we're going to be effective communicators, we're going to do the same thing. Once we've called somebody to action, it's like, here's why you need to act. Here's what's at risk. But here's what we could do. Here's what we could accomplish. Here's where we could go. Here's what could happen. Here's what the future will look like if we move in that direction. And so, again, whether you're communicating to your kids, your spouse, coworkers, you're preaching a sermon, or you're leading a management team, there's always going to be times when something urgently needs to be done. Something passionately needs to be done. Maybe it's a tragedy, and as a result, you need to respond. Maybe it's a change in direction that needs to take place. But whatever it is, take a moment, step back, and ask yourself the question, what's unique about this moment? Because it doesn't matter if it's a storm. It doesn't matter if it's an automobile accident. Whatever it is, those things have happened in the past. What makes this one unique? And then what's my call to action? What am I going to ask someone to do? And then if they do it, where's it going to take us? And how do I paint that picture so that they can actually see it? That's so much more powerful than ought to. Right? You ought to do that. Why? Well, because you ought to. That's just not very motivational. And even if people have a sense of ought to-ness about whatever it is that you're asking them to do, it's just a lot more effective if they understand the uniqueness of the moment. Like the moment, right? That puts a sense of urgency in it. It's a moment, and we either capture it or we don't. We either take advantage of it or we don't. We either step into this opportunity or we don't. Because the clock is still ticking, and then once they act, what can you see? And you, as the one communicating, are going to spend a lot more time thinking about what the other side looks like. That's why you're communicating, right? That's why you're the one talking. You're the one sharing. And so you may have not thought about it. They may not be able to see it. The better picture you can paint of the future, the more effective you'll be in getting people to move in that direction. And I don't know what Abraham Lincoln thought as he got back on the train that day after delivering this speech, but I can tell you several hundred years later that we look back on it and we say that it made an incredible impact on the uniqueness of our nation, and that it was not the end, but it was the beginning of a new freedom. So you and I have the same capacity. He was just a person, but he was a person who communicated effectively. And effective communication will take you to new places. So make sure you give some time to improving. It'll make you a better spouse, a better parent, a better friend, a better coworker, a better minister. It'll make you better in every area of your life, because in every area of your life, you need to communicate effectively. Thanks again, guys. I just got to tell you, I have so enjoyed the opportunity of walking through these different communicators. I've learned so much. I've been reminded of so many things. And what's encouraging is that they all have different personalities. They all communicate differently, and yet they're effective in the way in which they do it. So I don't know how you're wired. I don't know what your past has been like. I don't know what gender you are. I don't know what age you are. I don't know what ethnic background you are. I do know this, that no matter who you are, you can improve in your ability to communicate. And if you do, it will change. So be sure and catch a hold of the next episode. We're on all the streaming platforms and video format on YouTube. We're going to be starting a brand new series before long, and you'll have to come around and figure out what it is. I can promise you this is going to be a lot of fun. We've got some amazing guests coming up just around the corner. And if you have any suggestions or ideas, send them to us. Let us know. The whole reason we're doing this is so that together we can be better at what God has called and gifted us to be. That's the goal. So you got an idea, I would love to hear it. We're doing our best, and we're getting better every time. We'll see you next time on the Troy Gramling Podcast. God bless.